The airline industry post-COVID is characterised by deteriorating service, long queues at airports and extraordinarily high prices. But at the heart of the problem, for travellers at least, is a lack of seat capacity and competition between airlines. In Australia, Business Weekend understands Qantas has 20 aircraft on standby as a contingency in case there's another COVID outbreak. Coincidentally, one of its chief rivals, Qatar Airways, wants to double its current flights into Australia. That's 21 flights a week. And that's being fiercely opposed by Qantas, as were revealed exclusively on Sky News earlier this week. To get to the heart of this corporate battle, let's go to Doha and speak with the Chief Executive of Qatar Airways, His Excellency Akbar L Parker. Akbar, many thanks for your time. Can I just start by asking, have you applied to the Australian government formally to try and get these extra 21 flights?
Yes, Ross, we have. And we are waiting to have bilateral air services negotiations with the Government of Australia.
So in that regard, if you did get those flights, where would they go to? Would they be adding on to existing routes, or would you try and bring new routes on as well?
Yes, as a matter of fact, our air services agreement only allows us to go to three main gateways in Australia, which is Perth, Sydney and Melbourne. We also operate to Adelaide, and we had added the Brisbane during the pandemic. We would like to serve additional frequencies to the same gateways, and of course look at opportunities that we will get to other cities in Australia to connect the Australian people to the very large network of Qatar Airways.
OK, so Qantas argues that if a state-sponsored airline such as Qatar was allowed to expand its services into Australia, that this could risk Australian jobs. How do you respond to that?
No, it's quite the contrary. First and foremost, let me put the record straight. We connected Australian people to the world during the most difficult period in aviation history. We continued uninterrupted at the peak of the COVID, serving the three main points in Australia, which is Sydney, Perth and Melbourne. We also added, during the pandemic, Brisbane to the network. We kept Australian people connected. We made sure that at huge losses that we continue serving the Australian people and the Australian trade during this difficult period. What is interesting to know that we, the largest operator in Australia, as a matter of fact, completely stopped operating out of Australia, whilst we, at huge losses, continued. In April of 2020, we carried 36% of all the arrivals into Australia. We, as a matter of carried 1 in every 5 Australians into Australia. So you can see our commitment to Australia. What is happening at the moment and why we are being stifled from getting additional rights into Australia is the largest operator in Australia has cut its flight to 50% of pre-COVID level, more than double the price of the fares to the Australian people in the benefit of the shareholders. In addition, getting billions of dollars of state aid during the pandemic period in 20 and 21. And at the same time, even their large international partner has also cut flights to only 50% to pre-COVID levels, whilst we are offering an alternative to the Australian people, who we always like to serve, and to make sure that they are well connected internationally. We have done a lot of other things for Australia. We did repatriation flights. We carried Australians back to home, and vice versa, carried the stranded people in Australia back to their homes, with the charter flights to India to bring Australians back, with the charter flights to Kabul, risking our crew and our aircraft to repatriate people from Afghanistan. We have done a lot. We were the only airline that did major charter flights during the Australia Open in 2021. So you can see how committed we are. We are always there for people in good times and in bad times. We don't walk away. And the reason we are being challenged to get additional traffic rights so that they can put prices at high, reduce capacity, and really take the passengers with their fares to cleaners.
Okay, can I ask you, would you give assurances that fares would come down to travellers if you were given this extra capacity?
Our fares are already very reasonable. What we don't want to do is to increase fares to levels that will make Australians unaffordable to travel outside Australia and bring large tourists into Australia that in such a high demand as a destination.
So do you imagine, because I know, say, for example, you've done a deal with Virgin in Australia. You've been previously part of the One World Alliance, which included Qantas. You've now included Virgin into your thing. Do you imagine that this might have also added to some of the friction between Qantas and Qatar Airways?
Look, I don't want to get involved into politics between airlines in Australia. What is very important, Ross, for me to tell you is that as part of One World, Qantas should be working with us, not with other airlines, in the spirit of the alliance. However, as they are working with a competitor of mine, I have the full right to work with another airline in Australia to develop our relationship and to serve the Australian people and the people who are members and working together with Virgin Australia. Why should I not work with their competitor when they are ready to work with my competitor?